Today I'm talking about this guy and this cake. What do they have in common? At this point, absolutely nothing. But that's not going to stop me from making this video.
My name's Bethany Brunn. I am a licensed mental health counselor and I make videos about mental wellness. This is Albert Ellis, the father of rational emotive behavior therapy, and he also came up with the concept of shooting all over yourself. And this is a Tres Leches, a very popular Latin cake made with 3 different types of milk.
Making something is a place to practice being curious, experimenting with new things, and practice making mistakes and being okay with it. It's a rehearsal before taking bigger risks with personal growth and change. I think baking, people avoid it because it's easier than cooking to fail at. And sometimes people believe they should only do things that they're good at. My goal today is to demonstrate flexibility in baking and what you can and can't do, and everything will turn out fine. It's a chance to explore your own shoulds and musts and challenge them. In keeping with the theme of threes, I have 3 baking tips that will hopefully help you with your failures in baking, and they all have to do with temperature. And I will talk about Ellis's 3 musts and how they contribute to us shooting all over ourselves. Most people are familiar with baking, so before I get into the recipe, I want to talk about rational emotional behavioral therapy, as most people have probably not heard of that. REBT basically follows the premise that what we think about events and not the events themselves is what leads to negative emotions. It follows then, if your cake doesn't turn out, it's not because of the cake itself, but because what you think about the cake not turning out. Ellis came up with 3 musts that when we believe them, they are the main ones that lead to negative emotions. The first must is that I must do well, I must get approval from others, or else I am bad. Which leads to thoughts like, I should have done better, I never should have tried, people should accept me, I must be accepted, I must always do well. I should never fail, I should only do what people like. The list can go on, and that's where we get the phrase shooting all over yourself. Baking, like other activities that are a little more finicky and involve a little bit more skill, sometimes people will avoid because there is a higher probability of failure. Particularly if you believe the must that I must always do well. Then if you fail, you're going to feel bad about yourself. Ellis proposed to challenge these beliefs. Instead of saying that I must, then you can say, I would prefer, or it would be nice if. This prevents all or nothing thinking, and it gives space for if things don't turn out well. Before I get into the other 2 musts, let's get back to the baking.
We have sugar, flour, milk, eggs, salt, no salt today. We have evaporated milk, condensed milk, whipping cream, vanilla, and last but not least, we have baking powder.
And now for baking tip number 1, ingredient temperature. When baking, ingredients blend better when they are at room temperature. This includes any kind of refrigerated item that is going to go into the batter or into the cake. So unless the recipe specifies that something should be cold, hot, or warmed when you put it into the recipe, it's safe to assume that it should be room temperature. Now let's turn on the oven, and that leads to my second tip.
Your oven may not be the temperature that it shows on the display, so to be sure that your oven temperature is correct, you can purchase an oven thermometer and put it in the oven, and it will tell you what the temperature actually is to improve your baking. We are going to start mixing the ingredients, and while we're doing that, we'll talk about Ellis's second must.
Ellis's second must is that others must treat you well. So much of therapy is about how to manage when others are critical of you, how to set good boundaries, and for good reason. But the reality is, is that sometimes even if you are setting good limits, people will continue to express their negative opinions and they will continue to criticize. Generally, people are free to express their own opinions.
So to illustrate that, here's our 3 room temperature eggs, and to separate out the yolks from the whites, I should use a separate bowl, but what I'm going to do is separate them directly into the mixing bowl. So I am cracking the eggs. I'm starting to separate out the yolks from the whites, which I'm going to put in the yolks in a separate bowl to use later. And so I'm doing this with each of the eggs, and that one, the yolk dropped in. And so when you notice that, if the proper way is to separate them first, notice how you might be feeling about it, any shoulds that are going through your mind, like I should be doing it a different way, so that actually, oh no, I could avoid that exact problem. This may or may not impact the outcome of the cake, but just notice how you're feeling right now, because I broke one of the shoulds that you should be doing while you're baking. The recipe calls for the eggs to be fluffy. And again, what that means depends on what your interpretation of that is and how you should or shouldn't do it. It doesn't mean that it's supposed to be stiff peaks, it just says fluffy. I made the choice that it was dripping, so I think, well, we should be able to keep going. There, it's less drippy. To me, that should be fine. What you think should be done may be something a little different here. I'm a lazy baker and I don't like to wash a lot of dishes after, so instead of using measuring cups for 1 cup, I will weigh it with this simple kitchen scale, and that will be 4 ounces because it is a dry ingredient, and that is a cup of sugar. So there I go, I add the bowl, tare the weight, and then I'm going to measure it until it is 4 ounces. You add the sugar bit by bit, so then it's incorporated slowly into the egg mixture, and then you keep adding it until it is done. And then after that, we're going to incorporate the yolks back in, including that broken one. We're going to slide that right back in there, and you slowly add that. Again, this is up to your interpretation of how quickly or slowly you should do it. We're going to add 4 ounces or 1 cup of flour, and then also the baking soda at this time. So there's the bowl I used for the sugar. We're going to weigh out 4 ounces, which is 1 cup, and I will add the baking soda off camera, and then we're going to alternate that with a room temperature 1/4 cup of milk. I go back and forth and add these slowly back and forth. I scrape the edges about halfway through once I have all the flour in, and then we're going to add vanilla, and I don't measure it, I dump it in.
I have never heard someone complain about too much vanilla in something.
And there we are, we're just going to dump it in, and it's going to be the right amount. And then we mix it until it's just incorporated, and then we're done. I use a deep disposable pan that has a lid, and then we're going to spray it with Pam and then dump all the batter into the pan. And the oven will be the temperature that we need of 350. We'll place it in. And what's really important, and my 3rd tip, is that you do not open the oven door until you're about 3/4 of the way through. Don't do it, it will make your cake fall.
Don't do it. Ellis's last must is that the world must be easy. That means that nothing can ever go wrong. That means that nothing can ever go wrong for me to be happy. So if my Tres Leches doesn't turn out, and I also have the belief that things can't go wrong, I'm going to have negative emotions about it. I might be anxious, I may be angry, sad, or embarrassed. But if I believe sometimes things can go wrong, that sometimes things are hard and you can't get it the first time, then I'm going to be much kinder to myself, and I might even be able to have a sense of humor about it. This will help me to stay more relaxed and may help me to be able to think better about things and problem solve, so that I may be able to come up with alternatives, maybe some solutions, and I may also be more willing to try this again. Let's go check and see how the cake's doing.
The time is up. We're going to take it out of the oven now, so let's check it. Looks good. And we're going to know for sure because we're going to stick a fork in. And if it comes out clean, then it's ready to go. So let's take a look, and it's clean. So we're going to pull the cake out of the oven, and then to make space for the milks that we're going to pour into it, we're going to take the fork and poke holes into it. You can do that right away or after it's cooled down. So now we're going to combine the condensed milk and the evaporated milk into a bowl, and we will use a whisk to mix the two together. And you can do this before it's cool or not. And I'm pouring it in there. You'll see that I forgot the vanilla. I'm actually off camera going to pour the rest of the vanilla in. Once again, Lazy Baker, I'm going to weigh out the cream, and it's a little bit more than 8 ounces for 1 cup, which is what it calls for. So we're going to get 8 ounces in there, and then we're going to put it in the mixer and whip it until it's stiff. It finishes fast, so if you go too long and it breaks, just keep whipping, and then you got butter and buttermilk. Other than that, just check it frequently and make sure that it's stiff. And then I'm going to add it on top of the cake. You see the milk's all incorporated in there, it's soaked in. And then I'm just going to add all of that to the top of the cake. Spread it out. And there it is, our beautiful cake, and it's ready to go. We're going to send it on its way. We got the nice lid that it came with, and it's all ready for the party. We have made a successful cake. So this is the time to celebrate with our friends and family, and they can taste test it and make sure that everything is as we hoped it would be, looking beautiful, looking great. That's exactly how it should be looking.
Good. Alrighty, let's review. If you find yourself saying a lot of musts and have tos and shoulds and always and nevers, that's a clue that you might be getting into some negative thinking, which is going to lead to some negative emotion. So remind yourself that you don't have to do anything. You don't have to think a certain way. Things don't have to be a certain way. And the world doesn't have to be the way that you want it to be for things to be okay. What you can say to yourself instead is that I would prefer things to be this way. And then that gives space for the opportunity to feel okay, even if things aren't perfect. I had fun today, and I hope you did too. If you want to learn more about rational emotive behavior therapy, and if you would like to make this Tres Leches yourself, you'll see some links in the recipe below. Until next time, take care of yourself. And when we meet again, I'll help you to get back to you. It's okay, babe. As long as the battery doesn't run out. Party's not till 6. I got all day.